Are you crying?
Hi, everybody. I'm Patty Jenkins, fellow director.
Yes.
So excited to be here to do this Q&A because I love this movie. Eva had asked me to come and see it when it was a rough cut. And so I walked into it expecting, like, okay, well, you know, listen, they're tough and we'll make it through. We'll see what it was. It was literally this movie. I was like, oh my God, I love that movie. And even when I watched it again, I see, I guess, some finishing touches, but I really nothing substantial.
Yeah. Well, I won't forget, I made Patty, you know, it's painful to watch early cuts, you know, because it's like the sound's not right and the voiceover's not in yet, and we haven't mixed it, but go ahead and wait. So it's hard to ask a favor of somebody, especially like Patty, who's super busy, and I was like, will you please come watch it? And you watched it and you go, you know, the movie ends and she goes, don't change a fucking frame. That was her exact words. Don't change a fucking frame. That's the movie. Lock it.
Yeah, I have to say, I love this film, and I was so blown away. You are a very experienced director, so I'm not surprised that it was more evolved than I would have thought. But still, making a first movie in the epic amount of time, and you know, and taking all of that on. What I was so blown away by are a couple of things. The first thing is that this kind of messaging, depth, tone, is a very difficult thing to pull off. It's a Trojan horse, where you're both talking about some very deep and profound issues, and you didn't hold back in any of that. You peppered the whole thing with so much truth that I've very rarely seen about the Mexican community, and you didn't shy away from any of it. Not gangs, not drugs, not like you completely laid it out on the table. But you managed to hold the tone perfectly to weave this incredible story and keep it so entertaining and land it. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It's something that, having done the Wonder Woman movies, is near and dear to my heart, where I'm like, how can we try to make this about issues that are much deeper and more profound, and yet not have you necessarily know that? You did such a beautiful job at that. And then the second thing, amongst many things, but the thing I'll talk about tonight is it was super sophisticated directing. Like, directed. This was not like, you know, two shot, single, take on, which again, I know you've spent a lot of time on set and directed a lot of things, but that's not the kind of thing that a lot of TV requires. So very strong point of view, executing incredibly complicated sequences with a very strong point of view. You're one of the most entertaining people I've ever known. I know that now. Seeing this in particular, I knew that about you as a person and as an actress, but as a director, like, you are highly entertaining. Like just always keeps it interesting and exciting. And so, congratulations! I loved it for those reasons. And I would love to hear about taking on something with such. I know that you came to this. First of all, how did you come to this?
Well, thank you so much. Oh my God, that made me cry. Because that's how I want, the intention in which you make a movie, you hope lands, right? Like, I want people to feel this way. And so the fact that it landed like that with you makes me so happy. But no, I was at CAA, and I was a TV director. I love TV. We were talking about TV. We love TV. I like to, you know, direct and edit and be done and move on, and or I like to stay with characters for a long period of time as well. I love TV. And I had gotten a movie at Universal before this one to direct with Kerry Washington, and I didn't have a film agent and to do the deal. I had a TV agent, but I didn't have a film directing agent. And one of my dear friends is Nina Lederman, and I said, Nina, do you think Rowena, which is her wife, will look at the contract for Universal, because I don't think my TV guy can do it. And she's like, she goes, let me ask her. And then I get a call from Rowena, who's here. Where's Rowena? And there you are. And she was like, of course I will do. You know, Rowena has Patty Jenkins, Ava DuVernay, Taika Waititi. And I'm like, and Eva Longoria. And she's like, of course I'll look at it. And I was like, it's a template thing. I'm sure it's like, I'll get $2 to direct this movie at Universal. It's not, So through that process, she got the script. Rowena got the script of Flaming Hot and sent it to me. And she goes, "Hey, you should take a look at this. A lot of directors are going out for it. It's Searchlight. They're very prestigious. I don't know if you have a big shot. Not because she didn't believe in my talent, just because she's like, look, it's I think you should throw your hat in the ring because they're definitely going Latino. They want a very authentic point of view. But all you got to do is impress them. Like go in the room and impress them because they might have a different job for you in the future, So I read the script and I was like, I think I cried like 4 times, and it wasn't this script. It was a different script. And I was like, I am the only person who can do this. And I became obsessed with it. Like I wasn't intending to do, I must do a feature now. So I felt like I am Richard Montañez. I was like, people always told me no. People are like, jobs aren't for people like you. Well, you're a woman. Maybe you shouldn't do that. And so I really felt thematically, this was something I could do well. Like this story. I was like, I can tell this story because I am him, but also like, I'm Mexican American. He's Mexican American. I know this community. I creatively knew I had a lot of value to add to this story. And so I went in and fought for it. And then berated them into giving me the job. But I remember like the last time I had to go in and pitch for it, Rowena calls me and she was like, how do you feel? And I'm like, I'm so scared. She's like, I know, you may not get this. I go, no, I'm scared I'm gonna get it and have to do everything I just told them I was gonna do. And then I don't know how to do. Like, I was like, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this. And then made the movie. And it's funny because Matthew and David who run Searchlight, they, when we finished the movie and everything, they were like, the movie you pitched us 2 years ago is the movie you made. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was exactly what it is. And when you talk about tone, there was no comps for this movie. I mean, I'm not saying that in a narcissistic way. I mean it like this movie had never been made. Like we Latinos don't get a lot of bites at the apple. We as women don't get a lot of bites at the apple. And so I was trying to give comps, like to tell the studio, it's kind of like this, it'll be like this. And I was like, it doesn't exist. It's not gonna exist until we make Flaming Hot. And so when I was trying to pull comps, I pulled from so many people, but I knew I wanted a strong POV because when I met the real Richard, he's really funny and he has a really unique voice. He does like TED Talks and he's like a motivational speaker now. So he's really funny and he's not educated, but he's really smart. Damn, this guy's smart. And so he has this like really complex personality. And I was like, oh, the movie has to be in his voice. And so I immediately, I knew I wanted Linda Yvette Chavez to start from page 1 with me to write the script. And she's a Chicana from East LA. And she's like, I know, right? Like she talks like this. And, but she went to Stanford for writing. You know what I mean? So she's like, we gotta fucking lay some Oedipus theory on this shit, right? And you're like, yes, you know, like, yes. She's like, amazing. And so we really had a very great communication in a shorthand in tone. And I said, it's gotta be really, Richard's really funny. I think it needs to be funny. But he's full of heart too. He wears his heart on his sleeve. So I wanted it to be heart. And then I was like, I can't make a movie about the Flaming Hot Cheeto. I want to make a movie about this man and his life. And because it was about Richard, he was a cholo. He was a gangbanger. And I remember talking with Linda about it, and she's like, my family's gangbangers. My cousin's a gangbanger. We have family members incarcerated. Like, so we wanted to paint them with very carefully and with love and humanize the cholo, and show this community that you usually see in a stereotypical way on screen. And so we both were like on board with like, we're gonna take incredible care with, the truth about our community and also the potential of our community. And that's what at the end, like the bookend of him in present day, he's like, we're more than valets and gardeners and nannies. Like, you're never just those things. We're more than that. And so tonally, it was, I looked at a lot of filmmakers who had strong point of views, Scorsese, Adam McKay, I liked, not as slow and lyrical as Scorsese, not as journalistic as McKay. I felt like it's gonna be somewhere in the middle. And I find like voiceover can be a very lazy device that a lot of writers use. And I never wanted to say what we were seeing. I was like, no, it's gotta almost betray what we're seeing. And that happened a lot to Richard, when he beats up the guy at the factory in his head. That happened. That happened he told me that story. Richard, the real Richard, he said, man, I remember everybody was so mean to me, and there was this guy, and he was such an asshole, and I wanted to kill. He didn't know I could kill him. I could kill him, and had to mind my gangster. And I never forget that. And I was like, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if you did kick his ass in the movie? And then it was just in his head. And that's kind of what birthed these fantasy sequences and all this stuff. Like, it was a whole thing. I'm sorry, I'm long-winded because I loved making this film. And tonally, it was a hard thing to get right. And I think we got it right.
Yeah, no, I loved the use of voiceover and his point of view, and so many inventive, creative things like the sequences of of all of the bosses, and how he perceives the scene would go down versus how it actually goes down. I thought that was so inventive and hilarious. And I personally have always been one of those people that I'm not against I use voiceover in almost every movie, always. Monster, I did exactly what I did. I did where what you're seeing is the opposite of what she's saying, and I think it can be such a cool tool, and you used it so beautifully here.
Well, I will say too, like those Cholo scenes, the Cholo translator. I was a big fan of Drunk History. I don't know if you guys watched Drunk History. We're drunk now, and I was like. I was so adamant that it had to be in Richard's point of view. One, because we're doing a biopic, but also there was like some contested, facts. Like some people were like, he didn't do that, or blah blah blah. And I said, we're telling Richard's story. If you want your story told, go sell a book and sell it to a studio and get a movie made. Go tell your story. We're telling Richard's story. So I was very adamant about it was his point of view and his story. So I always bumped on when we had to go to the Frito-Lay executives because we weren't in his point of view anymore. Like, he wasn't there.
Right.
And so I told Linda,
that's interesting. That makes perfect sense. I can see how weird that would be.
Yeah, all of a sudden we're in Plano, Texas. He had never been to Plano, Texas. So I was like, I think it should be, and it was from a story Richard told me, and he said, I didn't know what a boardroom was. I thought like that's a place where you keep boards. And he thought like they wore tuxedos. Like there was a version where they had tuxedos on in the boardroom because he thought it was just a fancy place. And he goes, I don't know, they were all like pissed off because like I did this, and his storytelling, I was like, that's the scene. And I remember Tony Shalhoub, who plays Roger Miko. How great is Tony Shalhoub? He only shot the last like 3 days of filming because we condensed his stuff, to be at the end of shooting. So he comes in, and his first scene on the first day is one of the Cholo translator scenes, and he's like, "You pendejos are telling me," like he learned it because we sent him the recording, and he comes in, and the whole crew's just dying laughing. We're like, "Wow, this works! It works!" Like, and everybody's laughing. He goes, "Oh, it's so great. What am I saying?" And then back then he had just complete trust in me and what we were doing. I was like, it's gonna be so funny, you're just great. And it really was like the two highest rated scored, audience scored scenes is those two Cholo translator scenes.
So
but it was
funny.
just to stay in his point of view. That was the device we had to use to stay in his point of view.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense now, and so inventive, so creative, such a great way to do it. Well, and so also, you did your documentary that was about serious subject matter, but as far as directing, this seems like it's also got a kind of profundity at the base of it that was, I would guess, is the most profound at the base of it thing that you've ever taken on. How was taking on all of those issues and yet trying to keep that in balance? How did you approach it?
Like I didn't want to be like down with white people, like that wasn't the goal. It was, I did want to show the reality in the 70s, like in the 1970s, shit wasn't good. I mean, it's not great now, but like, Mexican Americans, and that's why I did the Chicano montage, was to like set the table. And that's what I like that Adam McKay does so well, is he kind of quickly, he does it more frenetic and a little more journalistic, and to set the table. Like anybody can do a movie about the housing crisis and make it interesting is like great. And I saw, in The Big Short, when he's like, look, in 2008, this was happening. Got it? Great. And then he moves on. He doesn't hold your hand to make sure. And so I was like, I hope I can do that to explain to people the Chicano experience in the 70s and 80s, to set the table for this story. Because this story, you know, Mexican Americans, we are white and we're white passing, but we're a class apart. Like, we still have racial discrimination, we still have police discrimination, we still have job discrimination, we still have housing discrimination. And so I wanted to have a Trojan horse of like, I'm gonna slip this pill of history, but keep it entertaining. And so it was a hard balance. And the studio, Surfside was really great with that, with notes, because, you know, being the outsider and the white person, I was like, how does that feel? And they were like, you know, it felt like a beat too long here, or felt, you know, you hit it right in here. So they were like my gauge of like outsiders. I remember, you know, I had one comment about the word wetback, and they were like, I don't know if you should say that word, because that's like the N word for us. And I said, no, we have to leave that word in, because that's the worst thing you could be called in our community. And they kind of trusted me on that end. They were like, okay, if you think that's correct, then you keep it. So it was a constant dialogue, but I wanted to make sure that, you know, you understood why he couldn't move up in the factory, because that was just a fact too. And then the black guy, his name is Clarence, by Dennis Haysbert, but the real guy was named Julius. And that was a real character, and it was a black guy at the factory who couldn't move up. I mean, he moved up, but he also reached a ceiling because he was a person of color, and they kind of bonded over that. And I remember when Linda and I were writing the script, we wanted to fill out the factory. I was like, we need more people. Like, who else does he talk to? Who else? And he had never told us about Julius. And then towards the end, he goes, I mean, there was this one black guy, and we're like, what? And we're like, what a great character. And then we were like, boom, Clarence is in the movie. But it was a true person. And Julius actually died when we were making the movie, The Real Guy. And Richard was a pallbearer at his funeral.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
they were very good friends.
And that same thing about carrying something significant and yet always trying to keep that ball afloat and moving, it must have affected the whole process too. Like, how was directing in with that in mind?
Well, you know, I felt a great responsibility. You must have felt this on Wonder Woman as well. Like, you're directing for all women in this moment every day. Like, did you not carry that with you?
Yeah. No, I know, yeah. And that's like why I'm so curious, because you did such a beautiful job.
Well, I felt
at
that with like the Latino community.
and I know what it is to be like, this is so much bigger than
you
being for me. It's I've got to be balancing this message responsibly, and like the weight that you carried and pulled off was like, I remember being in the theater and bawling at the first time I heard the theme song of Wonder Woman. I was like, this is amazing. It was about something bigger, and so we felt that on this film. I remember I fought for my DP, Federico Cantini, who's from Argentina, comes from commercials, and I loved his music videos. So that's why you feel that the film moves. Like the camera's never still, and when it is, it's a point of being still in the moment. But like for the most part, 90% of the movie, camera's moving. We're whip panning. We're pushing in. We're steady cam. It was moving constantly, and I think it's his background of commercials and videos. But I fought for him because I wanted a Latino DP, and I wanted all Latino department heads. And I feel like sometimes when you do the diversity hire, people think you're hiring less, right? Like, oh, you're hiring the less talented person. And we're like, no. They're equally, if not more talented, because they have added value in this particular situation, and it made the movie better. Like Elaine Montalvo, who was our costume designer, all her references, I know Elaine, she's amazing, all her references were her family in the 1960s, the farm workers, and then there was her brothers, and then Brandon Mendez and Cabot McMullen were production designers, and Brandon, all that their house and everything was like the same paneling his parents had, the same carpet his parents had. Like, it was like all of their references were their families. And same thing with Federico. He's like, oh, we should do this. So when I hired Federico, Searchlight was like, okay, I mean,
it's on you, because I was like, I want him. And I was like, Fede, they don't really have a lot of confidence that we're gonna pull this off. And he told me, no better position to be in than to be underestimated. Let's go prove him wrong.
I agree.
Yeah, and now of course everybody wants to hire Federico, and I'm like, no. But like, you're mine. Fede and I felt the pressure, like we couldn't get it wrong. One, because I fought for him, and he felt like he couldn't let me down, and I was like, I can't let a whole community down. Because they're gonna be like, we hired that one Latina director that one time and it didn't work, so let's wait another 20 years before we hire another one. Literally, the last Latina to direct a studio film was 20 years ago. And so we can't get a film every 20 years. Like, what the fuck? And so,
I'm amazed by that.
Yeah, and I didn't know that until Stacey Smith told me that. But then, so we felt this intense pressure to get it right, and we were super preppers, and then when we got Jesse Garcia and Annie Gonzalez, they felt the pressure as well. Like, we don't get roles like this. They don't get a role of 3 decades, and Jesse playing all of those colors, and Jesse being, smart and funny and dangerous and vulnerable and strong, and like that. We don't get roles like this. And Annie's like, we don't get roles like Judy. So they felt it, like we all felt it, and we all carried it every day. And when we wrapped, we just kind of like finally exhaled. But it was hard. It was hard. We felt like we weren't just doing the movie for me or for us. It was like, we are doing this for such a bigger reason. And if we don't have success, they're not going to do another one. Yeah. And I thought of you all the time. I'm like, what would Patty do? I had a shirt that said, what would Patty do? Yeah.
No, but can I even, just for the audience, just expanding upon this, a detail that you're talking about, the crew that you picked. So it's already very complicated to be picking, have a feeling that you wanted to have all Latina and Latino people, in your key crew positions. But another thing that people don't really understand is TV directors don't pick their crew, and they don't set tone, and they don't do any of those things. It's a major part of feature filmmaking that you did so beautifully. I just want, for anybody that's never directed a film, this is masterful tone. When I say setting tone, it's not just standing on the day. Yeah. It's not just saying, oh, that felt right. You picked so beautifully every single one of these people, and I was so impressed by that too. I'm like, I immediately, look, you'll never know this, but I had you didn't know this, but I had an Amazon movie that about the Amazons.
Yes,
so
I did know that, yeah.
That was greenlit, that I was gonna try to get you to do as soon as I saw this, because I was like, she could do it. Because it's all this, because it's massive tone. Yeah. I was like, you need somebody who understands how to thread that needle, but also who can nail a massive tone. So I was so impressed that I was like, oh my God, I think Eva's the one who could direct that movie and do such a good job at it. But alas, we're not doing that.
But I will say, because of TV, directors are just for hire, and it's always the show. Writers, TV's a writer's domain, movies are a director's domain, and I've been doing TV for 12 years, and I always go, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna cover that, in case they want this, I don't know, I direct a lot for Mark Cherry, who did Desperate Housewives. He started my directing career, so I'd be like, well, Mark's not gonna like that, let me ask Mark, let me block it, and I'll ask Mark. Everything was like, I'm gonna ask somebody else. And the first time we're on set, and they're like, hey, do you want this or that? And I go, that's a good question, we should ask somebody. And I was like, and everybody stared at me. I was like, oh, me, I decide, and I decide this. Like, I was like, oh my God. But I remember going, oh my God, there's nobody. You are the person. So that, like, this is like every single decision. But you do I on my set, it's best idea wins. And I had amazing people, and we built this factory. We built that from zero. Isn't that crazy? And because I went to a Frito-Lay factory, and they're so highly mechanized now. There's no people anymore. And so all those jobs that you see, all those people in the 70s, it was people would put the bags in the box, and somebody would fold the box, and somebody would put the sticker in the box, and somebody would put the box in the truck. That is all mechanized now. There's no human beings in the floor. It was so quiet. I was like, where is everybody? And they were like, oh, that guy runs the machines. There's one guy with an iPad. And I was like, oh my gosh. And they make chips. Frito-Lay makes chips 24/7, so we couldn't even like, hey, can we shoot in this corner of the factory? Like they were like, no. So we knew we were gonna have to find a factory. We went to Albuquerque. We were looking for warehouses, and we couldn't find anything. And Cabot and Brandon were like, we're gonna have to build this. And we're like, we're gonna have to build this. And kudos to Searchlight because they gave us more money because they were like, you're gonna have to build it. And we're like, yeah. And I have never watched more YouTube videos in my life on how to make potato chips. So like the tumbler and the extruder and the fryer and the dryer and the bagger and the weigher and so we had to make sure like we all like just double checked each other, but it was always like such a great collaboration when you do film. It's like everybody's like, what if we did this? And I was like, yes, that's better. That's way better. I don't know if you remember the time lapse scene when the 10 years pass and the graphics are on everything. That took about 80 brains. Because I watched the movie yesterday. Do you remember yesterday it was about the Beatles?
Yep.
And in that movie, all the Beatles lyrics were like on the street, on the merry-go-round, and whatever. They were just really cool graphics. I was like, oh, I'm gonna use that one day. I didn't know for what. And when we knew we had a 10-year jump, I didn't want it to be a Chiron. 10 years later, I was like, well, how can we creatively? I want to see the factory diminishing in people, and I want to see the years passing. And I want this news report that we had found. It was a real news report, and we couldn't option, so we ended up having to rewrite it and get an actor to say it. But it was about Reaganomics and how it really sucked for everybody. And so I told Fede, I go, how do we do this? And he had a group text with a lot of DPs. And he goes, hey, you guys, we're trying to do this scene. What do you think? And then a DP from Argentina would send us a clip. What about this? We're like, no. And then a DP from Spain would send it. What about that? And then our friends would send us, how can we do a creative 10-year jump? And I mean, everybody was like, what about this? What about that? Blah, blah, blah. And finally, Fede did show me something, and he goes, what about this? And it's a specific camera, and it does this thing, and I said, okay, I don't know where the graphics are gonna be, but it might be on the forklift, it might be on the tumbler, let's have a guy cross with a box, let's have a conveyor belt, let's have this guy cross with a banner. I said, because I don't know where I'm gonna put the years yet, but I know it's gonna be in stuff. And he was like, okay. So it was just like, it really took 80 people to figure out that scene. And it's one of the scenes I'm most proud of because of that. Like the crew you hired, it's like I had total confidence that they were like, okay, let's all figure this out.
But again, goes to you picked this crew that gelled together so beautifully, which is very hard to do and takes a lot of time and experience often for people to be. But it's not a surprise because you've been on set for so long, even when you weren't directing.
Yeah, but I've been on sets where you have a shitty person.
1,000, you know so much. Yeah.
Where you're like, you're great. It's like there's somebody that is not part of growing in the same direction. This was not that.
Yeah, and your editors, they were up,
how great was the editing?
So great.
Yeah.
These are, amazing.
She was great. We had two editors, Liza Espinas and Kayla Emters. And
how did you find them?
Well, I was a really big fan of Judd Apatow, and so Liza Espinas came from Judd's camp. And so she did like the first assemblies and we talked a lot about, she would tell us like, if there's anything missing because we're still at the factory, she would assemble really quick and tell us, if you have any more inserts of any chips, it could be a Dorito, a Cheeto, a Frito, like any, okay, great. So she was great. We communicated a lot. And then, the first cut was 2:10. It was like 2 hours and 10 minutes, which isn't bad, because I was like, okay, we can go down from there. And then we switched over to Kayla, and she finished it, and she brought it home, and her first cut was like 93 minutes, and she didn't lift a thing. Because I was already thinking, okay, we're gonna have to lift the Clarence scene. Okay, we're gonna have to lift this Judy scene, and she just was very efficient, and that's why it feels like a page turner. Mm-hmm. Literally, like you're in the next scene, you're in the next scene, you're in the next scene, and that's Kayla. Yeah, they were fantastic. Both of our editors, fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah. But it's so interesting how they can make or break your film.
Totally, all these people, and that's what the greatest thing that I learned doing such doing such big movies as the Wonder Woman movies is that I used to do everything myself. I used to only trust myself. Not literally, I had great people that I worked with, but I really was only counting on myself, because making short films and things, you're really only counting on yourself and nobody cares but you. But I learned that you're still directing when you hire the best people and you say, this is a problem that needs to be solved, and then you're the arbiter picking. That is directing. Like that is exactly the job. It doesn't have to have been your idea. Who cares? You have to be the one who's the guardian of the project and is able to say, not there yet, bingo, thank you, you know, like, and so oftentimes things are things like that, and that's so great of you to embrace it that way.
No, I thank you. I really, I always say this, I have a very specific vision. Like, you can't really get me off my vision.
This couldn't have
like, I was like, this is my vision. How we get there, I will take all of your ideas. I'm not specific about how we get there, but like, you're not gonna knock me off the specific vision of this. So we all got to, you know, meet here. But, you know, somebody will say something and I was like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. That's a great idea. Or that's a horrible idea, you're fired. You know?
People misunderstand it. If somebody doesn't have a clear vision, it's a totally different thing. You don't sit around and shop what we're doing here. That's not a
horrible idea. No, but I will say, when I was meeting DPs, Searchlight really was wonderful with, like, we will set you up for success. Here are these Oscar-winning DPs, and I met with so many Oscar-winning DPs. And I have to tell you, they all felt like this was the little movie they were going to shoot between their big movies. And I was like, no, this is the big movie. This is my big movie, and I need you to treat it like the biggest movie you've ever shot. And I remember there was one DP I met, and he wanted to make a completely different movie. His references, you know, he's like, how many second unit days? I was like, second unit? We are the unit. So I was like, what? It's so clear who wants to make the same movie as you. And I remember sending this script.
You did that. You didn't fall for that, which is great.
Like, I was like, oh my God, you're so talented. Not for this, but like, love your work. I love what you've done, but like, you don't want to make the same movie. And that's when you get into trouble, and especially as a woman, because and especially in coming from TV, you have to go through so many DPs. And you know, they're very, you know, pat you on the head and like, oh, sweetheart. And you're like, you know, I think the camera's better over here. I'm like, it really isn't. It's better over here. So, you know, going through that, you know, dance in 12 years. And so knowing, like, I don't want to do that every day on a 35-day shoot. I want us to be in line. And so Feather was a dream DP, dream. But it's because he wanted to make the same movie as me. So we were like, should we? Yes. You know, should we do that? Yes. Like, we were both like, yeah. So it was really amazing experience for me and for him as well.
So great. And so making a movie that does have so many different layers of importance, how is it changing your like view towards the things you want to do as a director?
So funny. Right? No, I don't want to do it. I think I'm going to just drop the mic and not direct again. I said that to somebody. We screened at the White House. Like, Biden introduced the film. The White House is lit up like a Cheeto, and it was 1,000 Latinos on the lawn, 1,000 Latinos on blankets, crying, clapping, cheering, repeating the words. And I was in tears, and Linda, the writer, with me, and she goes, dang, girl, how are you gonna do this again? And I said, I don't think, how does it get better than this? Like, that was the effect I wanted on those people. And so as I read things now, it's like, it has to say something. It has to say something. I want to do culture defining storytelling. That's I think the bar. And I want it to be entertaining. I don't want it to be broccoli. You know what I mean? I want it to be entertaining and fun, but like, you know, but saying something. And it could be about it. It could be about women's rights. It could be about, you know, Chicano rights, Latino rights, you know, human rights. It could be about anything, but I just want to say something. And if I'm not going to say something, it just takes too long. I mean, how long were you with Wonder Woman?
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
To be with one thing, it's like, it's got to be worth it. And so, yeah, as I'm reading now. And by the way, I love fun stuff. I love, like, I love a good comedy, you know. but I still think comedies can say something, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has had a very, to Rowena's frustration, not really, because she supports everything, and she's so supportive, but I've had that same thing, where it's like, because it happened to me with Monster,
Yes.
it was very hard to come out of that and have people offer you a bank heist movie, and you're like, I know that this could be so much more profound. And also it becomes a thing where if you do something you believe in, whether it succeeds or fails, it succeeded.
Yeah.
Because you did something that you believed in, and so it's just like, other jobs started to sound like a job
Yeah.
for money, where you're like,
Well, yeah, and I heard that,
I
like,
could do that, but
yeah, unless it's a lot of money. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, because I heard an agent say that, you know, you do one for you, one for them, one for you, one for them, and I was like, who's them? It's one for me, one for me, one for me, because it's such a personal journey. Why would I do one for them? Who's them? I want to do one for us, for my community, for our people, you know. So, yeah, I'm having a hard time finding the next thing. There's a lot of stories that I want to tell. I could stay in the biopic world forever too, because we have a lot of stories to tell of true people that have done amazing things that you're like, I can't ever make that up. That's amazing. But also you don't want to get stuck in that either, you know? So it's hard. It's hard to think about what's next.
take your time, really do, because I mean, you know, I think it's important to be all in when you decide to do something, and
Well, we're on strike, so there's no
there you
work.
go.
But I will say, you know, I got sent the script, and my agent was like, you gotta read this. You know, it's a big, you know, studio movie. And I went in and I was like, I don't think the script's right. I think you're gonna blow it up. I think the third act, the wheels come off, blah, 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 blah. So then they call me back, or they call my agent, and my agent's like, so isn't she great? And they go, she's great. Doesn't feel like she wants to do the movie. And I was like, they're like, you literally just blew up their script and didn't get the job. And I was like, I don't want the job. I didn't go in that room wanting the job, so I'm sure I didn't get it. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard because I really believe some of the best stories haven't been told yet. And until we tap into a different talent pool of storytellers, we're gonna keep seeing the same stories being told. And that's why, to me, Flaming Hot's so special, because I can't find a movie that's been done with these faces. And when I read the script and got the job, I knew, like, Hollywood defines what heroes look like, and they never look like me, and they never look like us. And to have the opportunity to put Richard on screen and go, God, he sounds like my dad, he sounds like my Theo. Like, I thought that was the coolest thing I could ever do.
Yeah, and you did it beautifully, and I think it is such an interesting thing that I've thought about so much, where even the whole system that surrounds movies really only still sees, like, there were things that in Wonder Woman where people would write that we got something wrong, and I was like, no, we weren't even trying to do your formula, we were doing something different. And it worked for our audience, but it's an interesting, it then led me to reflecting upon the fact that that it is the stories that need to, you know, it's like, it's great that people are getting behind the chair, but embracing different kinds of stories, and the stories you haven't seen on the big screen before about the people you haven't seen on the big screen is still such an interesting, you know, battle to fight, and so rewarding.
Yeah. 100%.
So I think we've been here as long as we're supposed to be, but so I'll ask you your one last question, which is, what's been the most, like, it's always very hard, as I know, but like, what's been your favorite, like, if you had to pick a favorite thing about doing this movie?
Oh God.
I would say how it's landed and resonated with not just the Latino community, everybody, because it's a underdog story. It's a story about perseverance, the American dream, and just how everybody has embraced it. And you know, when we first tested the movie, the first time an audience saw it, and the moderator, I don't even know what that person's called, she comes back with the scores, and she goes, wow, you got a 95. And I said, oh, with Latinos. And she goes, no, with Asians, Blacks, Whites, and Hispanics. Like, it was 95 across the board. So for me to take a specific story and be so authentic with our storytelling and have it reach a broad audience, that was my favorite part. You know, critics and all of that stuff, like, they got it. When I read reviews, I was like, you got it. You know, of course there were some bad reviews who were like, how could you glorify fast food? I was like, you didn't get it. But you got it, and you got it, like, you know, so that was probably, you know, the most rewarding, that the intention that I wanted to make this movie, got, you know, landed with who I wanted it to land with, and then of course, specifically with the Hispanic community, that they got to see the story, because we don't, like I said, we don't have heroes, specifically in corporate America, like to see a Hispanic not only survive but thrive in corporate America, that's like, what, I can be that? And we can't be what we can't see. And so to have the opportunity to tell this story where kids can see themselves in it is very important to me.
And beautifully done.
Thank you.
I know that you're saying you feel like you can't, you know, maybe you'll never do it again. You will.
I will.
And I'm so
Okay.
excited for you to do it again.
Thank you.
I think you're a tremendous director,
Thank
and I'm
you.
so proud of you.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy that everybody came.
Thank
here
you for
to see
staying,
this.
you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Patty Jenkins, everybody.